This is lesson 27, and I'll be discussing pickup notes.
So the first Noel is a great example of a familiar song that uses a pickup beat. So you'll notice, first of all, that our time signature is 3/4 times. So we're in simple triple meter. We know that the top number tells us there should be 3 beats per measure. And the bottom number tells us that a quarter note will be our beat or pulse note. So if a quarter note is worth 1 beat, then a half note will be worth 2 beats, and an eighth note will be worth just half a beat. And looking right here, we can see we have 1 beat before our first measure line. Following that, we have a 1.5 beat note in the soprano, followed by an eighth note, followed by 2 eighth notes. So this is a total of 3 beats. And the next measure as well is a half note and then 2 eighth notes in the soprano, and that adds up to 3 beats. 3/4 notes adds up to 3. So after that, we're fine. 3 beats in every measure after that. So what is going on with this first orphaned beat? Well, this is an example of a pickup beat. Sometimes the pickup note or pickup beat is half a beat. Sometimes it's 1 beat. Sometimes it's 1.5 beats. It depends on the time signature and what the composer wants to do. But essentially, it's an incomplete measure that leads us into the downbeat or first beat of the first official measure of the piece. So, the ha fur, her snow ho well. The ha, those extra 2 eighth notes are considered pickup notes. So how does the composer get away with this? How does he account for this? Well, in this case, this pickup beat is literally worth 1 beat. So if we were going to have a complete measure there, obviously what we're missing is 2 beats worth of music, right? So this is how he gets away with it. We go to the end of the piece, and if it's correctly written, some modern computer apps don't seem to understand this, but if it's correctly written and it's in line with theory rules, we should only have 2 beats in the final measure. So the last measure plus the pickup measure equals a total of 3 beats, or equals a complete measure in 3/4 time. And that's what we have here. So this is a correctly written example of the first Noel. We have 2 beats in this final measure, and then 1 beat as the pickup measure for a total of 3 beats. So as a final explanation, if we were counting this using numbers, it would be 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. So we literally count this as 3. Another very famous song that uses a pickup measure would be Amazing Grace. Again, just so happens our time signature is 3/4 time. So again, we'll have 3 beats per measure. We're in simple triple time. And our quarter note will be our beat or pulse note. Therefore, our quarter notes will be worth 1 beat, half notes worth 2 beats, eighth notes worth just half a beat. And if we look at our very first partial measure here before our first measure line, we have only 1 beat, 1/4 note beat in that measure. After that, we're good to go. We have 3 beats in each measure, right? 2 beats for the half note, and then 2 eighth notes. Altogether, that's 3 beats. Always 3 beats after that per measure. So this is another example of a pickup note. It would be starting on the 3rd beat of the measure. And where are the first 2 beats of the measure? Well, again, if we scroll all the way down here to the end of the piece, if it's correctly written, and right here is where we have those 2 beats accounted for. So this is literally beat 1 and 2 of our 3/4 measure, and then our pickup beat counts as beat 3 of that measure. Returning to Sally K. Albrecht's Rhythm Workshop. Returning to exercise 74 in the 6/8 section of the book. Beginning with example 4, as always, we'll first take a look at our time signature. The top number of the time signature is a 6. Recall that if the top number of the time signature is a 6, a 9, or a 12, we know we are in compound meter, and that our time signature will actually tell us how many subdivided or little beat or pulse notes will be in a measure and what our subdivided or little beat or pulse note will be. So in this case, there will be 6 little beats per measure, and the 8th note will be our little beat or pulse note. So remember that because we're in compound meter, we'll have to do one extra step of math to figure out what our big beat or dotted note value beat will be in 6/8 time. So I'm going to go down here and draw out 6 eighth notes to represent one measure's worth of subdivided or little beats. Notice these are undotted eighth notes. From there, I can just do the math and figure out that I'll need a quarter note and I'll need to have that be dotted in order to equal the 3/8 notes that our dotted quarter note naturally divides into. So we know we're in compound duple time because we have 2 big beats per measure. We can now go over here to our dotted note value tree and just assign 1 beat specifically to dotted quarter notes and 2 beats to dotted half notes. Our dotted quarter note beat, because it's worth 1 beat, will be represented by the Gordon rhythm syllable do. Our 8th notes, which are worth just 1/3 of a beat each, will be represented by the Gordon rhythm syllables do, da, di, where each syllable represents just 1/3 of the beat. Returning to example 4 now, I'm going to first of all go through and just mark in red slashes for all of my big beats, my do's. So my first do would fall here. It would be a whispered do. That 8th rest plus the 2/8 notes complete that dotted quarter note beat. So my next do falls here. Same pattern there. So my next do falls here. Do, da, di completes that beat. Do, and then a whispered or mouthed da, di. And then another do falls here. That'll again be mouthed or whispered, followed by 2/8 notes that complete that beat. Here's my next do. Again, same pattern. Then another do, da, di, a do followed by 2/8 rests completes that beat. Do, silent da, followed by a D completes that beat. Do, same pattern here. My next do falls here. Do, da, di. Do with 2/8 rest, complete that beat. Do, 8th note, 8th rest, 8th note, complete that beat. Do, 8th note, 8th rest, 8th note, complete that dotted quarter note beat. Do, da, and a silent or mouthed or whispered D, and do, da, and a silent or mouthed or whispered D. Sally Albrecht has chosen to give us a steady stream of 8th notes and 8th rests. So it's a perfect page to use to practice your subdivided pulse, where you can mouth or whisper the 8th rests you see, and then you can speak audibly the 8th notes you see. I'm going to pencil in the syllables for just a couple of these measures. Measure 1 first of all. Do, da, di, do, da, di. Underline the syllables we're going to speak and cross out the ones we will mouth or whisper. So, do, da, di, do, da, di. And doing exactly what I just did, basically, saying it slowly without worrying about keeping a big beat in our hands or feet or having the metronome on. Do, da, di, do, da, di. And the purpose of that is really just to start coordinating your mouth with what your eyes are seeing on the page. Then we can keep a slow, steady beat in our hands or feet. And try that again. Da, di, da, di. Let's look at measure 5. So I have a do, da, di, do, da, di. I'm underlining the syllables I'll need to speak, crossing out the ones that are going to be silent. D, do, Da will be whispered mouth or silently accounted for. D will be spoken. Again, I'm just going to speak these syllables and mouth or whisper the ones that are rests. Do, ta, dee, do, ta, dee. So I'm seeking to coordinate my eyes and my mouth. I'm also getting an oral sense of what this rhythm is going to sound like when it's actually performed correctly. Do, ta, dee, do, ta, dee. If I do that a little faster, I really get a sense of it. Do, dee, do, dee. Then I can put that slow, big beat into my hands or feet. Ready, speak. Do, ta, dee, do, ta, dee. Now I'm going to set the metronome at 50. Put this slow beat into our hands or feet. Remember that this metronome pulse is our big beat in 6/8 time, our dotted quarter note beat. Ready, clap. And now I'm going to first of all think my subdivided beat. Do, da, dee, do, da, dee. 1 and a 2 and a ready, speak. Da-dee, da-dee, do, da-dee, do. Da-dee, da-dee, do, da-dee, do. Do, dee, do, dee, do, da-dee, do. Do, dee, do, dee, do, da, do, da. So that's definitely a tricky one because she keeps changing where the eighth rests are in the pattern. And so it kind of can catch you off guard. Feel free to go very slowly and do that plenty of times without the metronome on. Let's go ahead and look at example 5. We're obviously still in the same time signature, so I'm not going to bother breaking down the time signature. Again, we're still in compound duple time. The dotted quarter is still our big beat, so I'm going to mark our big beats. Do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do. Silent da or whisper da, dee. Here's my next do. Do, da, dee, silent do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, silent do, da, dee, silent do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, ta, dee, do, ta, dee. For example 5, we're going to say this entire thing with spoken and whispered syllables without keeping a steady beat in our hands or feet and without the metronome on, just to give you an alternative way that you might practice this. So we're going to go slowly and keep a stable pulse as much as we can using our do, da, dee syllables. Ready, speak. Do, ta, dee. Do, ta. Do, da, dee, tu, da, dee, do, ta, dee, do, ta, dee, do, da, dee, tu, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, tu, da, dee, tu, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, ta, dee, do, da, dee. Now we're going to do the same thing. Still without the metronome on, but I'm going to clap a relatively stable pace in my hands or tap my foot. Ready, clap. Ready, speak. Do, 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 da, dee, da, dee, do, dee, do, dee, do, da, dee, da, dee. Do, da, dee, do, da, dee, da, dee, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, dee, do. Now we're going to put the metronome on at 50. Put that steady beat into our hands or feet. Ready, clap. Thinking my subdivided pulse. Ready, speak. Do, do. Do, da, dee, do, dee, do, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, da, dee, do, dee, do.